Hello and welcome to Weekend Sauce. I'm Dom,
I'm Corey.
and this is going to be talking about Season 8, Episode 5, The Bells of Game of
Game
Thrones.
of Thrones, yeah.
Alright, so
Spo-
just first of all, how did you feel about the episode overall? Was it good? Was it bad?
I'll say spoilers abound for sure, obviously, in case you haven't seen it. But I was not, for the most part, I wasn't that satisfied with how things went down. Um, I would say it's definitely better than the other episodes this season so far. Maybe the best episode this season so far, but it's still not great. Um, yeah, generally, I have a lot of kind of specific issues with how things went down. Why? What are you thinking?
Again, as I said in the past, less so. Less so actually this time. It was, it's a good normal TV show. It's a bad Game of Thrones episode.
Okay, that's
I don't like this episode as a Game of Thrones
that's fair.
episode, and I don't even really like this episode as like a normal TV episode. I feel it's
Okay.
very mediocre.
Yeah, I would say it's very average at best. Let's just going through it, right. So, um, first kind of the first thing that really happens this episode is Varys. Varys's
Acting out of character, in my opinion.
Yeah,
But
Varys's death, where he is committed to having Jon take the Iron Throne from Daenerys. So he's writing letters. He's doing kind of as much as he can to at least garner support, or at least to get the secret out about Jon's heritage, which Tyrion tells Daenerys about. And yeah, Varys ends up dying. He ends up getting burnt to death.
I would expect something like this to happen to Tyrion, right? In that sense, where we've shown, or he's shown that he's more compassionate now, right? And he does make mistakes, but not Varys, the person that's always had a backup plan for everything. They, I f Maybe he was too smart to really kill off in a satisfying way or
Yeah,
something, or,
yeah. I don't know.
I don't know.
I see what I know what you're saying though. It's strange to see Varys just go out and kind of accept his fate. You know what I mean? Because he's lived as long as he has through kind of his intelligence and his cunning and knowing things about people because he's the master of spiders, obviously. Um, or I don't remember his exact title, but anyway, yeah, I know what you mean. He really just accepts what's happening to him without kind of having a backup plan.
Walks up to John in pure daylight. It was just, it felt lazy. It felt cheap, but it's okay.
I guess he just forgot about his abilities as a spy master. Um, Calling a throwback to last episode, but yeah. So Varys dies, of course. Daenerys burns him to death. And then yeah, so we have Daenerys who is fairly committed to just burning King's Landing to the ground, right? We have the death of Rhaegal and Missandei kind of fresh in her mind, and she's really just ready to just kind of kill everybody. Um, I think we had forgotten to mention this in our when we were discussing last episode, but Jaime ends up leaving. He ended up leaving Winterfell to go try and
Definitely true. Broke
talk to
Brienne's
Cersei.
heart.
Yeah, that was really upsetting. Again, I mentioned it last episode, but when we talked last, I've always liked Brienne. She's a really good character, and I was happy to see her get some happiness because she deserves it. She's been through all this shit, and now she can kind of rest comfortably as a knight at Winterfell, hopefully with the man whom she loves. But then yeah, he kind of just ditches her for
And
Cersei.
I was naive enough to think that there'd be meaning, right? But
Nope.
there's not. You have to take it at face value because that is exactly what he
Yeah.
meant.
Yeah, he
And
just left.
yeah.
He just left her. And what ends up happening is Tyrion saying like we shouldn't burn the city to ground. Let me see what I can do. And he tries to kind of convince her, but it doesn't work. So what ends up happening is Jaime actually ends up getting caught trying to leave Winterfell, and he gets kind of imprisoned by Daenerys's army, by the Unsullied. So when Tyrion goes to visit him, he basically asks Jaime to try and get Cersei to have the city surrender, right? So he says, ring the bells, ring the bells, ring the bells. Um, you have to get her to back off, right? Really great scene. I really,
An
really
amazing
like that
scene.
scene. Yeah, very.
Right.
It
It's like a diamond in the rough
yeah.
out of all this
Yeah.
nonsense. You gotta, waft through.
Oh yeah, no, it was suitably touching. Again, we mentioned it kind of last when we were talking about last episode, but a lot of it has to go to the acting. I have Peter Dinklage who, he's calling back to kind of how Tyrion was at the start, right? He's the imp, he's this monster. Everyone's has treated him like this horrible creature, except for Jaime, right? Jaime's really been, for the most part, the only person to ever kind of have his back, right? And obviously Jaime's kind of an idiot. He doesn't always do the best things. He's kind of a horrible person. He says so himself, but yeah, he's always been there for the most part for his brother. And I thought it was a really well done scene,
It
right?
was an
You
amazing
could
scene.
definitely get the emotion. You definitely saw kind of all again, it's kind of the capstone of this whole. I mean, it is the capstone of this whole series, right? So you have the end of this relationship between them, right? And I thought it was really well done. So definitely a positive for this episode, one of the few. But yeah, so Jaime ends up leaving with some help from Tyrion and Davos, who ends up kind of smuggling him out. We have the fight kind of starting proper, right, at King's Landing, right? You have Arya, Jaime, and Sandor, who are all in the city for their own specific reasons.
Here's the thing, right? This is what I have a hard time believing, and I actually threw up my hands during this portion of the episode when I just saw them in the city.
Okay.
So, Jamie is coming or trying to get into the city. He is cut off by Daenerys,
Yeah.
right? And he's captured. It makes sense, right? She's looking out for who's around her. I was so confused as to how the Hound and Arya just walked into the city. Because, mind you, ever since season 1, it tells you that who spies is who. Varys usually has the small kids, right? Then after you have Cersei has her own like people that are watching out. How come nobody knows that they're in the city,
Yeah.
especially at such a high alert time? How did they get in the city?
Well, it's weird. I mean,
Why did they skip that?
yeah, there was that scene where Sandor kind of tells the guard like, "Listen, we get in there, we do what we got to do. Maybe you can live through this. People don't have to die.
But
Let
I
us
think
through."
that was like Starkmen, or that was like, you know what I mean?
It was. I agree. It is very kind
It's
of weird.
puzzling.
Yeah, it's puzzling. It's almost like an oversight, or again, maybe it's just something they neglected to even consider because they're trying to wrap things up with the kind of short amount of time that they have.
But yeah, continue.
Yeah, I was
We're
gonna say.
going through the
Nevertheless,
city.
they're all in King's Landing for their own reasons, and the fight kind of starts proper, right? Drogon obviously is
He's
far,
ascended from the
far,
last day.
yeah, far and away is just kind of overwhelming everything that Cersei and Euron can put at them, right? Takes out the Iron Fleet, no problem, no issues whatsoever. Takes out all the Scorpions, no problem at all. You have Cersei who's like talking to Qyburn, get the Scorpions, do all this stuff, and over, it's just like, well, we have nothing, right? We're getting absolutely destroyed here,
You know
right?
what it is? I figured it out in my head canon. It's that Rhaegal was just like half dragon or something, and Drogon, he was
Well,
it.
Drogon is the biggest one, right? They make it a point that he's the Black Dragon and that he's the biggest one of the bunch. I mean, I don't really know how that ends up translating specifically, but they always have made a point of that. He does end up making the Golden Company totally useless, right? That whole scene, right? They hype up the Golden Company and then they just
Literally seconds.
seconds, yeah, they just destroys all of
He's
them.
a strafing,
Yeah.
strafing them, just destroying them all. But
Mhm.
it was a nice, pleasing visual sight.
Oh yeah, I mean they definitely do a really good job at showing just how destructive the dragons can be, right? Because this is probably the most extensive we've ever seen them being used. I mean it is only one, granted, but like Drogon just destroys everything, right? He's the one who allows everybody into the city, right? And once you end up getting into the kind of person-to-person combat, it's obviously understandably like super gritty, very tough. You know what I mean? Like they don't. I'm glad they didn't like try and like kind of glorify and make it look cool. It's just a bunch of dudes running at each other and like hacking away as best they can, which ends up culminating after kind of again some few things. It ends up culminating with there's kind of this point where
It's a standoff.
yeah, the standoff at the little the road there where the Lannister army isn't, they aren't really willing to fight the Unsullied and the Northmen and everything. Unsullied and Northmen are just standing their ground waiting, right? And yeah, then we have the bells that start ringing, right? Title of the episode is The Bells, and the
That's
bells
right.
signify that King's Landing is surrendering, right? And for whatever reason, the bells are what set Daenerys off, and she starts destroying the city, killing everybody kind of indiscriminately, which also translates into Grey Worm starting an attack on the Lannister army. He chucks his spear through kind of the head guy.
He's getting revenge,
Yeah.
baby.
So here's the thing, right? This has been extremely polarizing for a lot of people kind of online and just in general discussion about the series, right? Because, again, seemingly at random, Daenerys decides to just kill everybody, just to kill all the civilians and everybody in King's Landing, just totally destroy the city and all that, right? Now, it's not something that is entirely unprecedented based on who she is, right? Because everyone's been kind of pulling that saying back from seasons ago, where it's like with the target when a Targaryen is born, you have to kind of flip a coin to see if they're crazy or not, right? And so everyone's, I guess the idea is that well, she's one of the crazy ones now after all the stuff that's happened to her. My beef with it is that it's so poorly done and rushed that it just looks silly. It just looks like they're just butchering her character to be subversive, which like we've
It's
mentioned.
true, right? I was just talking to you earlier about a better way they could have done it. Just keep Rhaegal for one more episode, kill him in this episode, and then we get Mad Queen, and it would at least have more of a precedent as to why she goes off.
Yeah, I
Not
mean,
necessarily that it's good that she kills
yeah, I
innocent
mean,
people,
you
but
want it to be a bit more almost
believable.
justified. Yeah, believable. You know what I mean? Like at this point, it's just she's she understands that the city surrendered. She knows what it means, but she says, "Screw it, I'm gonna kill everybody anyway." Right? Um, Again, I hope they get into it in the last episode because we have one episode left, but maybe they'll blow by it. I don't know. Grey Worm, I mean, for him, again, it's more of a personal thing as opposed to like, um, I mean, he's not killing civilians, or at least, yeah, I mean, he specifically is not killing civilians.
At least we didn't see it.
Well, I was gonna say what ends up happening is, yeah, Grey Worm starts the offensive against the Lannister army that's staying there, but then this ends up translating to everybody just killing everybody, right? So all the civilians are getting killed. Um, basically anyone who's there is getting slaughtered. I mean, Jon tries to get people to stop. Obviously, there's only so much he can do, and he defends himself, but he doesn't end up killing anybody specifically, except there's that one northerner
That's
who is
right.
seemingly prepared to rape this civilian woman, and Jon kills him, obviously, because Jon's the only one with any morals left, apparently.
He's modern day
Um,
Ned Stark.
well, it's funny. I was thinking like, um, Daenerys has always been, a big part of her who she is as a character is like she's with the Dothraki, right? And the Dothraki, their culture involves kind of slavery and all this other all this other non this not all this stuff that isn't great and really not pleasant. It's like I was thinking the whole episode I was like, how are they gonna kind of conduct themselves in this city setting? Because all this time they've been without slaves and stuff, and all they've been without um, their freedom essentially. I mean, like kind of like I said, the culture really just involves them taking what they want, and then yeah, we have this carnage that ends up happening.
Well, I'm happy you brought that up as well. Another thing that was kind of interesting that I saw online or opinion I heard was that she's kind of always been this way, at least Daenerys, right? Kind of in the sense, not necessarily who she does it to, right? But the sadistic manner that she
Yeah,
attacks people in, right? Like the Masters and Marine, I think.
yeah, the maesters and or sorry, the masters, yeah, the slave masters,
Yeah,
the
the
slave
slave
owners, yeah,
masters.
yeah. Well,
And how didn't she like skin them or something?
yeah, well, she she's crucified people, stuff
Crucify.
like
Yeah,
that,
that's what it
burnt
was. It's
people indiscriminately. There's that scene from last season where she kills the two Tarleys,
Yes.
right? So Daenerys has always had this kind of, again, almost like sadistic streak to her, but it's never really
It's never
involved.
involved.
It's never involved kind of non-combatants or people who haven't done anything. At this point, again, it's just her going around King's Landing, burning all the buildings, killing everybody in sight, which again translates into her army doing the same thing. And maybe if they built it up, it would have been more believable. But at this point, it just kind of happens at the flip of a switch. So my main beef, again, like I said, is they didn't. It just seems rushed. Like I would have been more okay with it if we had more episodes to see Daenerys's kind of descending mental state. But again, like at this point, she's just the bells are what set her off for whatever reason, right? So I don't know. I wasn't very pleased with that whole thing. I think
Well, I
that
mean, I guess we could kind of say that we were warned a little bit. I'm not saying it was good. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying like from last episode, she already said that she was pretty adamant that she wanted to kill everybody.
yeah,
For what reason? I guess you could say because Rhaegal dropped out of the sky, but it's Tyrion's advising her. Everybody's
yeah,
advising her, and she's just saying no,
yeah,
no, and
yeah.
you don't really have that reason as to
Yeah,
why she's so
there's
bitter.
really no
But
sense of reason. It's more like I want to do this, I'm going to do it. And then obviously Tyrion says, think about the people. and she says, "I don't care about them, so I'm gonna do it anyway."
Right.
Um, yeah, just not great all around. Kind of as this is going on, we have um, Jamie who ends up he ends up having to go around the main entrance to get
Closed
into King's
off.
Landing. Yeah, ends up
Right.
being closed off, and he has that fight with Euron, who somehow survives Drogon's
Happens
assault.
to just wash up on shore,
Yeah,
swims so far.
right as Jamie shows up, he shows up too. I like to think he was waiting for someone to show up. I don't know, but yeah, they have a little scuffle. Um,
Jamie gets stabbed 2 times. He still
Jamie, yeah,
has the energy to walk up all the
yeah,
stairs and find
Jamie
her.
loses for a little while, and then he kind of finally comes back at the end and kills Euron. He's mortally wounded at this point, so as he's kind of walking through to try and find Cersei, he's dealing with that. Cersei herself ends up deciding to abandon the Red Keep.
Oh,
Um,
here's the thing. She realizes that she's lost, right?
yeah,
And she just starts like pretty much freaking out
yeah,
and
she
crying.
breaks down. Yeah,
And I personally feel this was an out of character moment because in the past she's been not that she's participated in battles, right? But I forgot which season it was where she's basically waiting and she's with her child and she's gonna basically kill them both with poison, right? Like that's how strong she is. That she's saying like, if anyone's gonna take me out, I'm going out on my own
yeah,
terms and I'm
yeah.
taking my kid with me.
Well, so I think a good way to put it that I've seen online for what you're saying is that like in this episode they humanized Cersei and they dehumanized Daenerys because like before this again like you said Cersei's been always this like really again really hardened like character who just she is so almost resolute to the point of being stubborn, right? And it's she's um like you said, she goes on her own terms. She's very strong. You know what I mean? Strong-willed, I should say. And yeah, at this point, she just breaks down and decides that she's going to run away, which it did seem. I mean, it's an understandable reaction to having this dragon just totally decimate the city.
Yeah,
So in that regard, it's understandable. For her character, it is a bit weird. I agree. I guess it goes a bit both ways.
it makes sense. It's just that I wanted a little bit more. Not to
Yeah.
say that the acting had any like reason for it. It was good acting at the end of
Mhm.
the day. I just was a little bit weirded out by that whole exchange with her and Qyburn has to be the one to be like, it's gonna be okay.
Yeah, that was yeah. But yeah, she decides to leave, which is when, kind of as this is all happening, we have Sandor and Arya going through, and Sandor. I really like the scene where Sandor kind of stops Arya from going to kill Cersei. He says, like, you don't want to be like me, right? Like you might think that you want kind of vengeance and all that, um, but you don't want to be, you don't want to live the same life that I live. I really like that because again, I've always said this. Sandor's a really great character because of how kind of difficult he is. For him, he's so screwed up that really all he cares about is revenge against his brother, right? To the point where he ends up throwing his life away for it, which we'll get into that in a second, right? Um, but for Arya, she's gone through so much, but she's still fairly young. She still has like the chance to sort of turn things around and not be consigned to this horrible fate that Sandor's put himself through. So I really like that because it really has Sandor's character kind of shining through, where it's,
It's a
yes,
good foil of characters.
he's awful, yes, he's screwed up, but kind of underneath all that, is a guy who really wishes for things to be better, right? And since he can't do that for himself, he does that for Arya, Sansa in the past. So yeah, Arya ends up leaving, and we have Clegane Bowl, the long-awaited Clegane Bowl that the community and everybody online has been clamoring for, where we have the Mountain as this undead monstrosity fighting against Sandor, who is just himself.
And my
Um,
man Qyburn cooking up the hottest of undead people, the
yeah,
Night King, the true Night King himself, Qyburn.
yeah. Well, it's funny. So Cersei ends up, or rather, the Queensguard ends up attacking Clegane. He kills them all like instantly, and then just lets Cersei kind of wander past. And then there's that unintentionally hilarious scene where Qyburn is saying like protect the queen, and then the Mountain just like yeets him into some rubble, killing him instantly. Like that was unintentionally funny. I'm sorry. And yeah, we have Clegane Bowl. So um, I mean, as far as fight scenes went, it was pretty okay, right? It really did show kind of how disgustingly resilient the Mountain is. He's just this big pile of flesh that basically can't be killed, right? Sandor stabs him and cuts him over and over and over again, and I
To
mean,
no effect.
Gregor really ends up just throwing him around at the end, right? He's just throwing him like a rag doll, and he ends up, it kind of culminates in him doing the sort of eye thing that he did with
Oberyn.
Oberyn. I was gonna say Dorian. I'm like that wouldn't make sense. The kind of eye thing that he does with Oberyn, and then yeah, Sandor stabs him in the eye and then tackles him into the flames. So a fitting end for Sandor's character. Like I said, he's been consumed by this vengeance his whole life. It's nice that he had a little bit of redemption with Arya kind of at the end, but it was
it was
good.
an okay
It
scene.
was good.
It was okay.
I was pleased with how it ended for him.
I I personally, oh my God, I sound so negative and whiny this episode, but I just thought it was a little bit forced, if it made any sense,
No,
right?
I wouldn't disagree. Again, like I was saying for Daenerys' stuff, like the fact that they have less episodes means they're rushing everything. So I think it would have been a lot better to have some more build up for stuff, especially in this case with Sandor and Arya and the mountain and everything. I think it would have been a lot better if we had some more build up.
Like it
But
was just weird to see Sandor literally cleave through these idiots like they weren't doing anything.
yeah,
It's three
um,
guys, done.
yeah, pretty
Three
much.
slash,
Yeah,
three
like
slashes.
I know Sandor has been touted as like a really good fighter, but yeah, he just destroys them.
It's okay
Um,
though. I mean, it was a good scene. I liked all the dialogue Sandor was having.
yeah, yeah, it's very suitable for his character again.
But yeah,
Um,
it was good overall, I
yeah.
guess.
Um,
Just a little bit forced. That's the only thing I have to
Yeah.
say.
After this, again, there's, and keep in mind as we're talking, they always intersperse random scenes of destruction, which I think were um, a bit too many of them. I don't really need to
You
keep.
think so?
Well, I don't really need to keep seeing all these random civilians dying. Like I'm very well aware of what's happening. I'd rather focus on things that are important. I felt like they wasted a bit too much time on that.
I think I agree personally with you. I think they just really wanted to hammer home like what destruction is, what happens during a sieging of a city, right? All
Yeah.
the monstrosities, the power that Drogon has, right? What is happening? Like they just wanted to stress upon it. I agree 100%
Yeah.
though that they spent way too long on it. I don't need to see how many lives Arya has, right? Of her just walking through
Yeah. Well,
explosions, but it
Yeah.
was well done.
Yeah, well, the next thing I was going to say in terms of like more important stuff that happened is, Arya ends up trying to leave the city, right? And she ends up getting caught in, different instances of Drogon burning the city or, fights happening. And there's that, she ends up kind of trailing with these two, I don't want to say NPCs because it's not a video game, but these two extras.
Yeah.
They end up dying, obviously, but um,
Great scene, by the way,
yeah,
where the kid tries to turn back the
yeah,
mother, right?
yeah.
And Drogon straight.
It was again some of the stuff was pretty gratuitous, but I think it was a really good parallel to when Arya was trying to escape King's Landing after her father was executed. Kind of a lot of the same sort of feelings of anxiety and almost despair. But I mean,
It felt like it was Arya again,
yeah,
if that makes any
she
sense,
yeah, it felt
right?
like she was little Arya season one. But then there's the scene where she tells the people like you can't stay here, we have to go. She's a lot again hardened, more older. She knows kind of how she knows what she has to do in order to survive. So
Yeah, she even left the kid there. She's like, "Hey, I
yeah,
gotta go over
yeah.
here. I ain't
So
trying to get burnt."
yeah, good parallel, but also good development. So props to that. And then the last kind of important thing, if I'm remembering correctly.
Jon Snow pulls all the men out, right? He realizes this ain't it.
Yeah.
This ain't it, Chief.
Yeah.
I gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
We gotta get out of here. Everything's coming to an end.
hmm
And then after we get a kind of like a shot with Arya and the white horse,
Oh,
right?
I was gonna say Cersei and Jaime.
Oh, that too.
Yeah, when they meet up kind of underneath the keep where the dragon skulls are held and I mean there's no escape for them, right? Like the entrance ways are all blocked by rubble and stuff. Jaime's obviously mortally wounded, so they end up paired. They end up dying because the ceiling kind of collapses on them. Um, everyone
Before
had
that, he just ruins his character, but it's okay.
yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? With the stuff that they're talking about, Jamie is basically he says this isn't word for word, but he says something along the lines of like, I've never cared about anybody in the city ever. It's like, well, I mean, he did. Like there have been scenes in the past where that
Kingslayer, ha ha ha.
yeah, you know what I mean? I guess again, as far as memes go, I guess he forgot about his honor and his chivalry, but really they're trying to hammer home kind of how
How much he loved her.
yeah, how much he loves his sister, right? Like it's to the point of ruining everything else but his character. They're trying to hammer home this one aspect of him, which I'm not pleased about myself, but
I thought
um
we kind of got over that once he realized how selfish and self-absorbed she is.
yeah, well,
When she saw the white, right?
yeah, I mean, he ends up leaving, but then he changes his mind right at the very end and says, "No, I actually love you," and they die together.
It just came so out of left field.
Yeah.
It was.
Again, I would have vastly preferred if you stayed with Brienne because she deserves it.
But hold on, is this good writing that he goes back, right? Does that just show that I can't tell because I
I
don't like it
know.
because I don't like how it resolves and I don't like how it happened. But I don't know if it's just me being picky
No, I wouldn't say that at all,
or
actually. If you have traits of a character that, or if you have traits of a character that end up being sort of challenged and developed over the series, so in this case, Jaime's devotion to his family and most importantly his sister, right? If you have those traits being challenged throughout the series, he ends up with Brienne and he goes through that whole stuff where he loses his hand and all these other things, and then he ends up leaving Cersei, right? At the very end, to sort of say, nope, and throw that all out the window. And again, he abandons Brienne. He abandons the unified army of the Northmen and Daenerys, basically to go be with his sister as they die.
I think
Right?
what the problem was, it was like, as we've said, or as you've said a whole bunch of times, I agree with this. It's just rushed, right? Like, all this build up was for Jamie to leave, right? Last season, it was one of the last few episodes. And then, like, instantaneously, it's been like, what, like 3, 4 episodes? Like, five, I guess, is the fifth.
This is fifth, yeah.
But he left on the fourth. Like, in 4 episodes, man's like, I gotta go back.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? What do you mean? What was all
Well,
this for?
no,
What
it's
was
almost
all.
like in one episode he decides. You know what I mean? Like he hooks up with Brienne and everything's great with the two of them, and then he basically decides, kind of just following that. Actually, no, I'm gonna go be with Cersei. So yeah, again, I was not pleased at that, but here we have an end for Cersei and Jaime. Um, Again, I don't know if they butchered Cersei's character. It was a bit weird to see her in a more empathetic light. Now you end up feeling for her a little bit as she's understanding that she's gonna die, right? But yeah, I mean, the episode ends with Jon, like you said, retreating and everything, and everybody deserts the city, and Arya hops on the white horse and starts trotting along. So the last episode, the last very final episode of Game of Thrones is coming. So we'll have to see how they end up capping it off. But for this one, at least, still a lot to be desired, I would say. Still very, like you said, mediocre or even just average, honestly.
It was pleasing for the eyes, so don't let that stop you. Don't like not watch the episode because we're just at least I'm whining and complaining. Like I thought the episode was like it was okay.
Yeah.
It's
Um,
not bad.
Anything else you want to bring up or mention or focus on here in terms of good or bad?
Nah.
No. All right. Well, we'll sign off then. Thank you so much for watching, as always. Hit us up on Twitter if you'd like, YouTube as well. Take care. See you in the next one.